It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. So you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir. I said good day.
Yeah, that was a painful day last season in Norman. It was Iowa State's first win, by the way, in Norman since 1990. And Iowa State proved that they had a pretty salty team. Remember, last year they also beat T.C.U., and they gave both West Virginia and Oklahoma State a good run for their money. Iowa State last season was no fluke. And for Matt Campbell, yeah, it was a productive year, 8 wins, including winning their bowl game. And they do have several pieces back from last year's team. The Sooners and the Cyclones, Oklahoma, last time I checked, was a 17-point favorite to win at Ames this Saturday. Game can be seen, in this part of the country at least, on ABC for an 11 a.m. kickoff. And by the way, if you're looking ahead, and hopefully the Sooners aren't, but if you're a fan looking ahead, the Sooner game against Army, it's going to be pay-per-view. One time a year, the Sooners have a pay-per-view game, and this will be it coming up on September 22nd from Norman as Army West Point will come into Norman for a Saturday night game, 6 o'clock kickoff time. But again, that game will be pay-per-view on September 22nd against the Black Knights. Let's talk about this week's game a little bit. And by the way, a couple of things to bring up. I don't want to go any further until we pay our absolute respects for those along the East Coast, especially North Carolina, South Carolina, and now looking like Georgia as well. And there's other areas I know that are going to be impacted by Hurricane Florence, which looks like one of those once-in-a-lifetime type storms. Going to produce a lot of wind, going to produce plenty of rain. It's one of those storms that looks like it's going to just linger. It's going to just hang around over the weekend. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all those who are going to be impacted by the mammoth that Hurricane Florence, it looks like it's going to supply. And on the far less significant scale, it looks like several games in the college football world will not take place this upcoming week because of the hurricane. And that does include West Virginia at North Carolina State. Canceled. They're not going to make that thing up. For the Oklahoma Sooners, yes, it's been the best of times and the not so best of times. Just recently, of course, a 2-0 start. You'll take it. And 2 dominating wins. You'll take those as well. The most recent, a 49-21 spanking of UCLA. Kyler Murray, I thought, played pretty good. Not exactly great. There were some, there were quite a few incompletions. They did have the 1 interception. But other than that, was sensational. Throwing the ball, 3 touchdown passes. Did have Oklahoma's best rushing performance, by the way, 69 net yards rushing for Kyler Murray and had 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. So he's putting up some nice statistics so far. The Sooner offense looking good. So 2-0, moving up from number 6 to number 5 in the latest college football poll, according to the Associated Press. Of course, the news not all gravy for the Sooners. Rodney Anderson, as you know by now, out for the season, and he knew that the knee was going to be, an issue immediately after the play late in the first quarter as a result of an injury, and we didn't see him come back for the rest of the game. He was on the sideline the second half wearing the knee brace, but the news confirmed that Rodney Anderson gone for the 2018 season, his third, by the way, season-ending injuries. Had a leg injury before, and also, too, a neck injury. I mean, bless the guy's heart. Can't catch a break at all. So best wishes to Rodney Anderson. Too early to really speculate about his future. If he's going to decide to test the NFL waters, he could have done it this year, but wanted to give college another shot. But if he decides to go to the NFL, I could see him being an impactful player. I don't see him being a high draft pick, obviously, because he's damaged goods and, NFL owners, NFL GMs. If you have a case of injuries, especially serious ones, your draft status is going to be compromised, but it doesn't mean he can't make it in the pros. And it doesn't mean that he won't come back next year for the Sooners either. And this could be very well a medical hardship year for him, which means that he would get the year of eligibility back. But still so many question marks, too early to speculate the future of Rodney Anderson. But a good guy, and of course, last year put up the big rushing numbers, including over 200 yards rushing against Georgia, one of the best defenses in all college football. The guy's legit. There's no question the best running back Oklahoma had, your biggest breakaway threat, your strongest back, best all-around back, catching the ball in the backfield. and he is going to be missed. You would be kidding yourself if you said this doesn't affect Oklahoma. It doesn't mean, however, that all is doom and gloom and all is lost for the Sooners. It just means that starting this Saturday, it's going to have to go back to running back by committee, and you got running backs capable of getting the job done. None like Rodney, but it doesn't mean you still don't have quality in the backfield. I would expect Trey Sermon to get the ball most often early on, and it wouldn't surprise me if, as the game progresses, you see Cameron Sutton touch the ball more as well. And the two freshmen, T.J. Pledger, who's looked good so far, and I would expect Kennedy Brooks to be a part of that factor. Remember last year the Sooners went with as many as 4 running backs those first 5 games of the season. And remember the win at Ohio State, Rodney Anderson only had 3 touches in that game. And by the way, Abdul Adams, think he might be kicking himself a little bit for transferring. You might remember he started last year, but now is with Syracuse. Sooners have capable running backs, and again, this just means that everybody has to do a little bit more. And I think something that should make you feel very good as a Sooner fan, that veteran offensive line. And you might say, well, they didn't run the ball well last week against UCLA. But remember, the Bruins made a real conscious effort to first and foremost contain the run. And UCLA's defensive line did that. The linebackers supported the rush defense. So it was hard for the Sooners to open up those running lanes. I would expect, even though you're going against a good Iowa State defense that, held Iowa to just 1 touchdown, I still think the Sooners will get back to being a force on the ground, and again, because of the veteran offensive line. And you've got weapons, of course, at the receivers. You've got Lamb, of course, you got Hollywood Brown, and you've got Kyler Murray, who can hurt you throwing or running the ball. So I think the Sooner offense, I still think nothing changes as far as their approach to this year. I still think the goals are still pretty high. Yes, the injury is damaging, but it's not going to destroy this team, in my opinion. And the Sooner offense will go against an Iowa State. And another thing, too, about Iowa State, it's difficult really to know a whole lot about them because they've only played 1 game. You might remember the opener against South Dakota State 2 weeks ago. We didn't see it because the weather forced a cancellation of it. So you've only got 1 game of film material to work with when it comes to the Cyclones. And defensively, they look fine. In fact, it was 6-3. Iowa, in the latter parts of the fourth quarter, defense really ruled in this game, and Iowa finally put the game away with a touchdown with, I think, about 4 minutes to go to win the Cy-Hawk Trophy 13-3. But the loss wasn't because of the Iowa State defense. And, yes, Joel Lanning's not there anymore. Their tackling machine at linebacker certainly made an impact in last year's game in Norman. But you do have Mike Rose, just a freshman, but made a hell of a debut last week in Iowa City against those Hawkeyes. 11 tackles for the Iowa State Cyclone, Mike Rose. And you still have Willie Harvey, 9 stops last week. And, the linebackers are still going to be pretty good for the Cyclones. This is an Iowa State defense that will bend some, but they don't give up big plays very often. A very disciplined type defense, and they don't blow tackles very often either. A very tactical unit and a decent secondary as well. So for the Sooners, got to be patient in a game like this. I think you take what the defense gives you. These drives that Oklahoma will have Saturday will probably be ones in which they're really going to have to earn the points. But if they're patient, just protect the ball, stay away from those stupid penalties. And I think the Sooners' offense should dictate this game. Okay, so Oklahoma, big thing is be balanced, period, and everything should work out. Now, when Oklahoma's on defense for the 3rd straight week, the Sooners don't know who the starting quarterback of the opposition is going to be. Remember, Lane Kiffin 2 weeks ago, he held the envelope for as long as he could before making Chris Robinson a game-time decision starter at QB. Last week, because of the Wilton Spate back issues, we didn't know who was going to start at QB till right before the game, and it ended up being the freshman Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And this week, we don't know because Kyle Kempf, you might remember, he was the guy last year, the walk-on that really hurt Oklahoma. And we didn't know that he was going to be the starting quarterback. Jacob Park didn't make the trip, the Iowa State QB at that time. But it was Kemp who came in. And Kemp, the former walk-on, well, he walked all over Oklahoma's defense that day in Norman. David Montgomery was huge, the running back. And, of course, lots expected of him, even though last week was not one of his best weeks. Thank goodness Alan Lazard's not there, the all-Big 12 wide receiver, who had a nice game, including the game-winning touchdown catch. So the Iowa State offense, again, who's going to be the quarterback? Last week, that knee injury, I thought it was pretty damn serious to where Kemp was going to miss extended playing time. But as of right now, Matt Campbell doesn't think it's going to be a long-term injury. So you can go with him, or you could very well go with Zeb Noland. Now, Zeb Noland obviously hasn't played near as much. Did play some last week. Was not very efficient at all. So Zeb Noland could very well be the starter come kickoff when the Sooners and Cyclones play in Ames this Saturday. The Sooner defense has been terrific. The linebackers have really been something else. And last week, man, did we see them step up. 33 combined tackles for Kenneth Murray. Didn't make the stat sheet in game number 1 against the Owls, but certainly did in an impactful way against UCLA last week. Curtis Bolton, he's had one hell of a start. Mark Jackson really coming through from the outside linebacker. And Ryan Jones, who had 6 stops. So, again, the 4 linebackers combined for 33 stops, and they're a big reason why this Oklahoma defense, even though they've only played 2 games and not against the best competition, but so far they look better than what we've seen last season. And one guy you haven't seen much of is Caleb Kelly, the former 5-star player and starter last year. His playing time has been greatly compromised, but right now Oklahoma's got to go with their best. And right now, the guys that they have out there at linebacker are the best, even if it means diminishing the play time of Caleb Kelly. And the defensive line, got to be ready because, again, David Montgomery, he's a running back that it might take a couple of guys to bring him down. Fast, but especially strong upper body-wise, and he really destroyed the Sooners last year. The Sooners had poor tackling, by the way, against him. So let's see if the OUD can make amends. You know, last week, Neville Gallimore had 8 stops. Kenneth Mann's off to a nice start. He had 7 tackles, and Imani Bledsoe contributed with 4. So we'll see how that Sooner front 7 can do. You control David Montgomery, in my opinion. You control the game. Akeem Butler is not too bad of a wide receiver for the Cyclones, but nothing like Alan Lazard. So I think even though the Iowa State defense played well last week, their offense was greatly challenged. Only 1 field goal came off of a drive in the first quarter in which it looked like Iowa State was going to get the game's first touchdown. They got to the 1, but their drive stalled. And who knew that that was going to be Iowa State's best shot at points in that game? Iowa's got a real good defense, but from the Iowa State standpoint, stunning that they only got 3 points. Final thoughts on this game. The Sooners have not lost in Ames since 1960. To put that in perspective, John F. Kennedy wasn't even president yet for our great country. It's been, 58 years since the Cyclones won at home against Oklahoma. And I know that Iowa State beat these guys last year. I expect Oklahoma to come in a little more focused. Again, Iowa State defense will give their team a shot at hanging in for a while. But Oklahoma is going to have far too many choices on the offensive side. Even with the loss of Anderson, I still think the Sooners will have success offensively, although it may not be in the form of big plays. It'll have to be a steady diet of the runs and also what the defense will give Kyler Murray. And I think Murray will take advantage of that. I look for the Sooners to win 34-13. I think Oklahoma's a much better team. I think what happened last year is not going to happen again. So Oklahoma to win, I think covering that 17 points. Just a reminder that I will have my post-game show. I'll try to get it on after the Oklahoma-Iowa State game. It's looking good for that. If not, it won't be until very late Saturday, early Sunday, but there will be a post-game of Oklahoma-Iowa State. But don't freak out if I don't have that post-game on immediately after the game. I try to do my best with that, but sometimes other obligations take precedence. My 3 picks will be on later this week on this very same channel. This is when me and the almighty coin pick 3 college football games against the spread, and we review how both of us did this past week. Oklahoma versus Iowa State. Let's hope the Sooners don't get spooked like they did last year, and I don't think that's going to happen. Boom, sure.